My name's Samuel Leeds and I'm the best-selling author of this property book, Buy Low, Rent High. And in this book, I explain why most people think that they should pay off their mortgage as quickly as possible and are scared to pull out equity to grow their portfolio. The reason is because we've been programmed that debt is bad, whereas in actual fact, there's two types of debt. There's good debt and there's bad debt. A mortgage is debt, but if you take out a mortgage or release equity to then go and invest in more properties and you do that properly and professionally and well, then actually that's good debt and it's a very smart thing to do. Because most people see it as debt, whereas successful investors, they see that kind of mortgage, that kind of equity that's been released, they see it as leverage. Most people, their end goal is to be debt-free, whereas successful investors, their end goal is not to be debt-free, their end goal is to be financially free and to be wealthy. I know that this video might almost contradict some people's core beliefs. Maybe your mom and dad have always told you all your life, don't go into debt, pay off your mortgage as quickly as possible, work hard, whereas this is a little bit different thinking. But what I want to say is I want to ask you to be open-minded and think, rather than with your emotions, think with your logic, as if you were making a business decision. Rather than seeing these properties as homes, see them as investments. Also, I am not advised to give mortgage advice, so I would always recommend speaking to a mortgage broker and a tax accountant before you take on any business decisions in property. I can only speak from my experience, but I'm doing pretty well from property, so here goes. So I'm gonna give you a couple of case studies. Now, the first case study I'm gonna give you is of a lady who I actually knew, and she was absolutely skint, and she used to always tell me, you know, I'm really skint, I can't afford to pay my kids. Now, her property, she had no mortgage on it. So she was debt-free, which is most people's dream, but she was skint. She wasn't financially free. Her property was worth £300,000. I sat down with her over a coffee and we worked out that if she remortgaged her property, she'd be able to pull out 75% of the value of this property. 75% of £300,000 is £225,000. When you refinance a property like that, you don't pay tax on the money, because effectively it's a loan, it's not profit. So that £225,000, all of it, she could then reinvest into property and use that as just down payments. With that kind of money, you could buy at least 4 or 5 properties, suddenly making this lady, she's no longer debt-free, but she's now financially free. She's now making £3,000-4,000 passive income every single month, but she's got properties whereby she's got mortgages on them. Does it actually matter that she's not debt-free? Well, if it's good debt, I don't believe that it does matter. Also, sometimes people worry and say, what about the end of the term though, when you need to pay the debt off? Well, if she refinances this house, buys 4 other houses, is financially free, lives a long, happy life of good cash flow and passive income, at the end of the term, when she comes to pay off the mortgages, the chances are that the properties are going to have gone up considerably in value. On average, properties double every 10 years in the UK. Now, you can't necessarily bank on it, but that's what generally happens. So at the end of the term, when she's an old lady, she's got 2 options. She can either, option number 1, sell off all the properties, pull all her deposit monies out, and then she's lived a life where she's been financially free and now she's got this money to live on, invest in, spend, whatever she wants to do. Or number 2 is, depending on what the banks say, she could refinance again. Or she could sell off one property and then with the profit she could pay off the other mortgages. The bottom line is, the world is her oyster because she's used her money smart to leverage, and she's focused on being wealthy and being financially free instead of being small-minded and just trying to be debt-free. So if you've got a home that you live in and you've got equity, it makes sense, in my opinion, to refinance it and then invest and grow a larger property portfolio. Let me give you another case study. Let's say you buy a property for £100,000 and this is a buy-to-let property. So you're buying this as an investment. You put down £25,000 as a deposit, you've got a mortgage of £75,000. Rather than trying to think, for this investment property, I need to pay off that £75,000 as quickly as possible, that's not smart. The smart thing is to think, number 1, how can I generate as much cash flow as possible from this property? Maybe you'll rent it out by the room and get more rent. Maybe you'll pay minimum interest-only payments to increase your cash flow. That's smart. Maybe you'll do things to the property which will will increase the value. That's smart. So let's say after a few years, your property's now gone up and it's now worth £150,000. Now, I think the smart thing to do will be to refinance that property. How do you do that? I would usually recommend speaking to a mortgage broker rather than going straight to a bank, because if you go straight to a bank, that bank is going to offer you their best rates and their best terms. Whereas if you go to a broker, although you might have to pay the broker a small fee, they'll go to hundreds of banks and they'll get the best return, the best rates, the best type of loan, the best type of mortgage for you based on your terms, rather than you just going to one person. Also, if you've ever been declined a mortgage, but you've just gone straight to your bank and they've said, we can't give you a mortgage, I'm sorry, or we can't give you a loan, I'm sorry, then the best thing to do is go to a broker, because just because that bank couldn't give you a mortgage does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that no bank will. So you bought a house for 100, it's now worth 150. Your mortgage outstanding is £75,000. If you go to a broker and you say, hey, please can you refinance this property? What will happen is there'll be a lender, a bank, they will re-look at the property, they will give a new valuation, and if they agree and say, yep, this house is now worth £150,000, they will then offer to lend you 75% of the new value. So 75% of £150,000 is £112,500. So they'll say, we can now lend you £112,500 on this house. Now with that loan, with that new mortgage, you're gonna need to pay off the old mortgage, which is £75,000, which is going to leave you with a difference, with a profit of £37,500. Now that money, that £37,500, you don't need to pay tax on. That is tax free, because unless you've sold the property and made that money when you've sold it, then that's taxable, because that's capital appreciation, so you'll pay capital gains tax. But if you refinance it and get the cash from the refinance, technically that's not profit, it's just another loan. So with that £37,500, what are you gonna do? Well, of course, you're gonna use that for a deposit on another house. The little bit extra interest payments, because you've made the loan a bit bigger, that you're gonna have to pay on property A, are gonna be more than covered by property B, because you're gonna have a whole new house with whole new tenants, which means that your cash flow is gonna significantly increase on a month-by-month basis. And because you've now got two houses, two investment properties, as they both continue to increase, you've got more leverage. So it just makes sense if you want to be wealthy and if you want to get good cash flow. If you use this strategy, let's say you're 30 years old. If you're a 30-year-old person and you buy your first property and you keep refinancing it as it goes up, if you play your cards right and you're a little bit smart, there's no reason why you won't be able to buy over your lifetime, let's say by the time you're 65, 20 properties. Now some people say, but if you do that and you buy 20 properties, you're really highly leveraged, you're gonna have to pay off the mortgage at some point. At the end of the term, you're gonna be left with all this debt. And that scares some people. So what would I say to that? Let's look at the end goal. Let's look at the end term. So if you do this and you buy 20 properties, let's say each property conservatively is gonna be giving you a profit of £500 a month. Depending on the properties, it could be more, it could be less. And let's say that these properties, by the time you're 65, let's say they're worth £200,000 each. So you've got 20 properties, they're all worth £200,000. You don't own these properties outright, you have 75% that the bank own, and you only own 25%. That means that your property portfolio is worth £4 million. You own 25% of that, which is £1 million. So you are a cash millionaire. You're a millionaire. And you've got 20 properties making you £500 a month each. You're making £10,000 profit a month. You're making 10 grand a month, you're a millionaire, but you've now got to pay these properties off. What do you do? Well, again, you've got different choices. You can pay off one or two and then use that to then pay off the mortgages on the other. You can refinance again, or you could just, if you wanted to, sell up, take your £1 million and then do whatever you want. The bottom line is, debt is not bad unless it's bad debt. And the thing that freaks me out is that the banks will say to you, property investing is risky, you. The schools will say property investing is risky, debt is bad, but then they'll happily lend you money to get married or to go on holiday or to have an extension to your house, but then we tell you that property investing is risky. That's my thoughts on the matter. I've done this myself. I've grown quite a large property portfolio and I don't own the properties outright. I do get mortgages. When will I start paying the mortgages off? I guess when it gets to a point where you've got more money than you know what to do with and your property portfolio is so huge and you might just start paying off properties for fun. But while you're growing, while you're striving to be financially free, don't worry about being debt free. Just use your debt smart. And I wish you all the best in your success. I hope that helped. Please do comment your thoughts below. Don't forget to smash that like button. And if you haven't already, please do share and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you next time.